girl didn't flinch when he reached for her shoulder. She didn't move at all, just stood there in the half-dark of the cabin, one side of her shawl slipping down her arm from the weight of rain. When his calloused fingers brushed away the cloth, the firelight caught what the others had put there. A thick, ugly brand burned deep into the flesh near her collarbone. Faded now, but still raw-looking, still cruel. The mountain man stared. His voice came like distant thunder. "Mine," he said, not like a claim, like a vow. But let's go back to where it all started. It had rained for 3 days straight in the Montana Territory, hard enough to strip bark from pine. The mountain ridges were swallowed by mist, and the creeks ran high with cold snowmelt. Up near the north slopes, where trees grew thick and the wind forgot to whistle, there stood an old trapper's cabin. One room, one man, one quiet life. His name was Elijah Creed. Folks called him Creed like it was a warning, not a name. He hadn't been to town in 6 winters. Didn't write letters, didn't take visitors, didn't drink. Just hunted, hauled furs to a trading post 3 valleys east when he needed salt or lead, and stayed clear of people. People he figured brought noise, trouble, need. The morning it all changed, Creed was skinning a buck he'd dropped by the ridge. The hide peeled slow in the damp, his knife slicing easy down the ribs. Crows circled overhead but kept their distance. That was when he saw her, small figure, standing past the line of trees, too thin to cast a decent shadow. She wasn't armed. She wasn't dry either. Her dress hung in strips down her legs, and her braid looked hacked off with a kitchen knife. Creed stood. She didn't run. He looked around, for men, for riders, for signs of an ambush. There were none. She was alone. "Ma'am," he said, rough from weeks of silence. "You lost." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just a soft huff of breath, like it hurt to even be looked at. Then, slowly, she raised one arm and pointed past him, toward the cabin. Creed's eyes narrowed. "You want shelter?" A nod. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. She didn't move. Finally, Creed sheathed his knife and gestured. "If you got no trouble followin' behind, you can come. If you do, turn back now." She walked, barefoot. The cabin was little more than wood and flint, but it had a fire going and enough venison jerky to last the week. Creed pulled a blanket from his cot, laid it near the fire, and said nothing else. The girl sat. No eye contact. No thanks. She didn't speak for hours. Just sat there, knees drawn in, hair dripping onto the floorboards. Her skin looked pale beneath the soot and bruising. Not the kind of bruises a woman gets from falling. Creed had seen those before, on his sister years ago, on his mother once. The girl flinched when he handed her a tin cup of hot water. "You got a name?" he asked, kneeling by the fire. She didn't answer. "You run off from someone?" No answer. He stared into the flames, jaw tight. "You been hurt?" Still nothing. But after a long while, she shifted. Her blanket slipped. Creed caught a glimpse of the scar. It was shaped like a crude horseshoe, pressed just beneath her collarbone, still red around the edges. A branding iron. A real one. Not for cattle. For her. Creed stood fast, like the ground itself betrayed him. He walked out into the night rain and didn't come back for half an hour. The next day she spoke. "My name's Anna." It was whispered, like saying it broke some vow she'd been forced to make. Creed didn't react, just passed her a bowl of boiled oats and went back to chopping wood. Later, when the rain eased, he stepped out to haul water and caught her staring toward the woods, like she expected something to come out. A man, a dog, a ghost. "You waitin' on someone?" he asked. Anna shook her head too quickly. "No." He waited. She didn't elaborate. Creed knew the mountains, knew silence, knew how the wrong men left the right kind of fear in a woman. He didn't push her. But that night, after she fell asleep by the fire, he took his rifle and circled the perimeter of his cabin twice. Not because he expected visitors, because he didn't like how she'd looked at the woods, like something still lived in there with her name in its mouth. It was 4 nights later, after she'd begun helping him boil pelts and sweep the floor and speak in full sentences, that she came back inside, rain on her shoulders, and Creed saw the way her shawl shifted. That's when he touched her shoulder. That's when he saw the brand. That's when he said it. Mine. Not like she belonged to him, like no one else ever would again. And for the first time since she arrived, Anna didn't look away. Creed didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, hat low over his eyes. Outside, the wind dragged through the pines like a warning. Inside, Anna lay on the cot, curled so tight she barely seemed to breathe. She hadn't spoken after the brand was uncovered. Not a word, not a sound. But when Creed looked at her across the firelight, saw the way her fingers clutched the wool blanket like it was the only real thing in her world, something old stirred in him. Something he thought he'd buried after the war, after the betrayal, after he gave up on people for good. In town, they used to call it weakness. In the quiet of the mountains, it felt a lot like mercy. The next morning, Creed hitched up his mule and loaded a crate of beaver pelts. Anna stood by the cabin, shawl wrapped around her shoulders, face unreadable. "You ain't gotta talk," he said, tying the leather straps tight. "But if there's someone comin' for you, I'd rather know sooner than later." "I left them," she said flatly. "They'll come anyway." Creed looked up. "The brand," she added. "It's theirs. They put it there so no man would want me." The words sat in the air like smoke. Creed swallowed. "You were someone's property?" "Not legally," she said. "But that didn't stop them." He nodded once, and that was all. The ride to Cutler's Ridge was 2 hours downhill through thick pine and shale rock. A few settlers lived out that way, homesteaders, traders, a preacher's widow who stitched clothes for extra coin. Creed didn't talk much when he passed through. He traded fur, took what he needed, and left. This time he felt every eye on him as he stepped into the trading post. It wasn't just because he rarely came into town. It was because Anna followed him inside. She wore a second-hand coat that hung off her shoulders like it once belonged to a much bigger man. Her braid was tucked under a scarf, and she kept her eyes on the floor, but it didn't matter. People noticed her. People always noticed someone who didn't want to be seen. Old Mrs. Holbrook behind the counter squinted. "That your daughter, Elijah?" "No, your wife." Creed stared at her. "She's someone under my roof. That's all you need to know." That didn't stop the glances, the whispers, the quiet judgments. He bought sugar, flour, and a tin of kerosene. Anna said nothing the whole time, until they stepped outside and found a man leaning against the hitch rail. Young, maybe 20, long black coat, dirty hands, smile too easy to be honest. "Now ain't this something?" the man said. "I told Ben you'd come this way." Creed didn't blink. "Who are you?" The man looked past him, at Anna. His grin faded. "She was ours," he said. Not like he believed it, like he expected it. Creed didn't move. "You got a badge? Paper? Anything says you can speak for her?" The man pulled something from his coat. A folded page. The edges were torn, the ink smudged. "Ben drew this up. Claim of guardianship. She's under his care." Anna's voice came low. "It's a lie." Creed reached out, took the paper and held it up to the sun. Then he let it fall into the mud. "You tell Ben if he wants to come up my mountain, he best bring God with him. Because he sure as hell won't make it back down." The man's eyes hardened. "That ain't your call." "It is," Creed said. "If she don't want to go." The man stepped forward. Creed stepped closer. "You don't know what you're getting into," the man hissed. "Ben don't forget things." Creed's jaw worked. "Neither do I." They stared at each other, long and quiet, until the man finally spit in the dirt and turned away. "I'll be sure to pass along your greeting." Creed didn't watch him go. He just turned to Anna. "You all right?" She looked shaken, but she nodded. "That was one of them. Not the worst." Creed nodded once. "We're going home." By the time they reached the cabin, evening shadows had stretched long across the grass. The mule was jumpy, birds were quiet, and Creed's heart ticked like a hammer behind his ribs. He'd broken his one rule: don't interfere. But when he looked at Anna, saw the way she moved slower now, more like a person and less like a shadow, he didn't regret it. Not yet. That night, while she slept, he sat up with his rifle again. He loaded 5 rounds. Then he waited. The first sound came just before dawn. A faint clink of metal. Then a soft snap, a branch giving under weight. Creed was already awake, crouched near the stove with his Henry rifle. He didn't need to look. He knew the sound, knew the rhythm of boots trying too hard to be quiet. He counted 3 sets of footsteps circling the cabin. Outside, the mist clung to the tree trunks like old breath. The air smelled like pine sap and old gunpowder. Creed leaned forward, nudging the fire slightly with the back of his hand. Let them think he was just waking. Then came the knock. A single thump on the cabin door. He didn't answer. A voice smooth, low, too familiar. Elijah Creed. Come on out. We ain't here for blood. Just the girl. Creed stood slowly, stepping toward the door. Anna had woken. She sat up without a word, her eyes locked on him. Stay low, he murmured. She nodded. He opened the door. On the porch stood a man in a fine wool coat, clean-shaven, hair oiled back like he'd stepped out of a courtroom, not a mountain trail. Beside him, 2 others, both younger, rougher. One with a repeater slung across his shoulder. The other chewing tobacco, eyes dead. Creed didn't step out, just stood in the frame, rifle at his side, eyes steady. You Ben? He asked. I am, the man said. And you've got something that belongs to me. Creed didn't respond. He just waited. Ben sighed. She left without permission. I put up coin for her board, her food, her keep. That's a contract, and you know it. She says you branded her. Ben smiled, thin and sharp. You know what women are like, Elijah. You take one in, try to give her purpose, and suddenly she thinks she's got say over your house. I gave her food, work, a roof. She gave me lip, and ran. Creed's jaw worked. That's not work, he said. That's slavery. Ben took a step closer, boots creaking on the old porch wood. She was broken when I found her. Would have died without us. And now she's got you wrapped around her pretty little finger. Creed lifted the rifle half an inch. Not enough to threaten, just enough to pause the world. You get off my porch. Ben's smile vanished. You gonna shoot me, mountain man? Creed said nothing, but his silence was louder than any bullet. After a long beat, Ben nodded once to his men. We'll be back, he said, with the sheriff. And papers. She doesn't belong here. You come back, Creed said calmly, and I won't be waiting on the porch. They left, but the threat stayed. Anna didn't speak until the riders had vanished down the slope. I told you, she whispered. They always come. Creed didn't look at her, just started packing. What are you doing? She asked. Digging in, he said. They'll be back, and I don't trust whatever law rides with them. He reinforced the door with a timber plank, nailed the shutters closed, stashed extra cartridges in the kitchen table's false bottom. Years alone had taught him how to survive wolves. Men weren't all that different. Later that afternoon, he walked the ridgeline, looking for movement in the woods. He found 2 scouts, both watching from opposite ends of the slope. Neither tried to hide. He let them see him. He let them see the rifle on his back. He didn't smile. That night, Anna sat by the fire, turning a tin cup in her hands. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I can run again. Creed shook his head. You run, you'll never stop. You stand, maybe they will. Her voice trembled. I'm not strong. You don't need to be. I'll hold the door. For the first time, she looked at him. Really looked. Why? She asked. Creed didn't answer right away. Then he said, 'Cause someone should have done it for my sister. But no one did. Anna nodded once like she understood more than he'd said. The next morning, smoke rose from the valley. A column, controlled, deliberate. Then the sound, hoofbeats. Slow, steady, not rushed. Procession, not a charge. Creed stepped outside with his rifle. Anna stood behind him, silent. Down the slope came 6 riders. One wore a badge. The others looked like hired guns. Ben rode in the middle, hat low, smirking. They stopped 30 feet from the cabin. The sheriff, a man named Hal Lowry, lifted a piece of paper. Elijah Creed, I've got a petition here signed by Judge Marshall Outa Bozeman. Says you're harboring a dependent without consent of her legal guardian. Creed's jaw tightened. She ain't a dependent. She's a free woman. That ain't what the paper says. Ben stepped forward. You're outnumbered, Elijah. And you know this ain't worth dying over. Creed looked at Anna. She looked at him. Then she stepped forward. She walked past Creed and spoke, loud enough for all of them to hear. I am not property. I never was. And I'll die on this ridge before I go back with any of you. The silence that followed was thicker than fog. Even Ben didn't speak. Creed raised his rifle an inch. Not aimed, just ready. You heard her, he said. And then, like a storm holding its breath, the line of men stayed still, waiting, daring someone to move first. No one moved. For a long moment, the mountain held its breath. The smoke from the sheriff's pipe curled into the chill morning air, and the creak of saddle leather was the only sound on the slope. Creed stood still as stone, rifle across his chest. Anna beside him, bareheaded now, her braid undone, the old coat barely keeping her warm, but her eyes were clear. Sheriff Hal Lowry finally cleared his throat. Miss, do you understand the weight of what you're saying? If you're claiming you were never under Ben's protection, and there's no contract between you two, you're calling him a liar. In front of the law. Anna nodded once. Then I'll ask again for the record. Were you his ward? No. Did he brand you? A beat of silence. Then, yes. Lowry turned in the saddle. Ben. Ben's jaw tightened, but he smiled. She's confused. We run a homestead. Sometimes things get mixed up when you take in strays. She had a habit of stealing and running off. The brand was symbolic. Creed stepped forward, rifle still lowered but eyes locked. She's got a name, not a number, not a mark. Lowry turned back toward the cabin. He wasn't a brave man, but he wasn't heartless either. His eyes flicked from Anna's bruised face to the quiet fury in Creed's, and then to the men behind him, Ben's men all watching. He looked tired, like he'd seen too many half-truths in his years and was done playing judge. I didn't ride up here for a shootout, Lowry said. I came to keep peace. There's peace, Creed said, as long as they ride back down that slope. Ben leaned forward in his saddle. She's mine. She ran from me. That's theft. She's not a horse, Anna said, quiet but sharp. Ben's face flushed. You little. Creed stepped forward, the barrel of his rifle lifting by inches. That's enough. The sheriff held up both hands. I ain't gonna arbitrate this on a mountaintop, Lowry said. But I also ain't taking a woman against her will. Not without a court. Not without proof. Ben wheeled on him. You're siding with them? I'm siding with the law, the sheriff replied. And the law don't take kindly to brands on people. Ben's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. You'll regret this, Sheriff. I've got friends in Helena. Lowry shrugged. Then you can explain it to them. He turned his horse. Boys, we're riding back. The deputy hesitated, glancing at Ben, then followed. Ben sat in the saddle unmoving. His face had gone pale, but his eyes burned. This ain't over, he said softly. You think one backwater sheriff saves you from men like me? Creed didn't blink. No, but it buys us time. Ben spat. Time's all you've got left, mountain man. Then he turned and rode down the ridge. The wind picked up behind them, shaking pine needles loose like a sigh. Anna exhaled slowly. Creed didn't speak, just watched the riders shrink into the trees. That night, the cabin felt heavier, not with fear, but with the weight of something ending, or something beginning. Anna sat by the fire, turning a strip of leather in her fingers. Creed poured 2 cups of hot water and handed her one. She took it, looked at him for a long time. You didn't have to stand up for me. I know. You could have let them take me. Stayed out of it. I know. Silence. I don't know what comes next, she said finally. If he really has people in Helena, we'll deal with it, Creed said. She gave a half smile. You always that sure? No. He leaned back in the chair, boots to the hearth. But I didn't build this life to live in fear. And I sure as hell didn't open my door just to watch someone get dragged back into chains. Anna stared into the fire. Then she said, softly, I want to stay. He looked at her. Then you will. Another pause. Then she lifted her sleeve and touched the edge of the scar. Still pink, still cruel. Her hand shook. Someday, I want to be more than what they put on me. Creed's voice came like the crackle of firewood. You already are. And outside, the mountain wind carried no footsteps, only the quiet promise of dawn. 3 years later, a woman rode into Bozeman alone. Her dress was worn but clean, and she sat her mare like someone who'd learned to trust mountains more than people. She had no bags, no man beside her, and only a canvas-wrapped bundle tied behind her saddle. No one noticed her at first. Not the blacksmith. Not the clerk on the steps of the mercantile. Just another traveler passing through, until she walked into the courthouse and placed that bundle gently on the judge's desk. When he unwrapped it, he found a scorched branding iron inside, still caked with ash, still shaped like a horseshoe. Anna didn't say a word at first, just stood tall, braid hanging over one shoulder, hands folded in front of her. Miss, the judge said finally. I need to make a record, she replied. I want a written statement filed. Publicly. He blinked. A statement of what? Her voice didn't waver. That this brand was used on human flesh. That it was used in this county. That the man who used it claimed ownership over women. And that the law did nothing. The judge's face changed. He cleared his throat. I'm not sure what good it'll do, ma'am. It'll do good, she said. Because someday another girl will come. And I want her to know someone named it. He studied her for a long moment, then slowly reached for a quill. Back on the mountain, the cabin stood as it always had, quiet, solid, rooted deep. Creed was stacking firewood when he heard the hoofbeats. His back ached the way it always did come spring, and his knees warned of rain before the sky did. But his eyes were sharp when he turned. She didn't say anything when she dismounted, just walked up to him, coat trailing behind her, boots muddy. He nodded once. You're back early. Anna smiled. Bozeman has more walls than sky, she said, and people who still don't look a woman in the eye. Creed motioned to the cabin. You eat. Not yet. They went inside. The stove was already warm. Pot of beans simmered. The same old wooden table sat in the center, dented from use. On the wall hung a coat Anna had sewn from deer hide last fall, her own stitching, tight and neat. She poured herself coffee, then sat. You hear from that sheriff? She asked. Creed nodded. Lowry wrote, said Ben finally sold his land. Moved east. Never showed his face again. Anna stirred her cup. Good. Creed watched her a long moment. You tell them everything? In town. I did. And I didn't cry. Not once. He smiled. The kind of small, quiet smile that says more than words. They sat for a while in that old cabin. No sounds but the fire crackling and the distant howl of spring wind down the trees. Anna finally reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a folded slip of paper. Set it on the table. What's this? Creed asked. Land, she said. Up north. Next valley over. Claimed it in my name. He raised an eyebrow. You gonna build on it? I might, she said. But not yet. A long silence. Then softly, this place, it saved me. Creed didn't reply. I want to do that for someone else. Someday. He nodded slowly. You will. She looked down at her hands. Not delicate anymore. Not worn down either. Just strong. Capable. I'm not scared of being claimed anymore, she said. I know whose name I carry now. Creed's voice came quiet. Yours. She looked up, eyes wet but steady. Outside, snow melted into the soft earth, feeding wildflowers not yet born. Spring was coming. You could smell it. And as the mountain wind swept down past the trees, brushing against the cabin like a hand on a shoulder, Anna reached across the table and took his. Not for rescue, not for ownership, just for belonging. And for the first time in years, Creed let himself believe something could grow again. Something tender, something true. Even here, even after all that winter, even with a scar.